Okay, this is Mark meets Simon Amster, the creative director and head of branded content for the Bray Leino group.
Yeah.
Hi Simon.
Hello.
Can you give us a very quick summary of your career to date?
I came out of university with a degree in art history. That's useful. Spent about 6 or 7 years being a journalist, mainly a film critic. Ghostwrote some kids' books. Then got into startup of MTV that were running a thing called Showtime, which was a series of Arab networks. Wandered into a room and was given a job as a promo director. No idea what that meant or what that did. Spent about 18 months bullshitting my way through everything, not saying no to anything. Ended up being alright at it. Got a job at Flex Tech, which then became known as Virgin Media, slightly better, where I became promo producer for Bravo, Trouble. Then I became creative director for Trouble, then creative director for Living TV, then creative director for the Flex Tech group. Then I moved within that to become creative director for IDS. IDS was Flex Tech's sales team. Did all of the sales, sponsorship, AFPs for UK TV and Flex Tech. So I was the first kind of creative director who worked in that kind of sales environment, which was quite an interesting thing. There was like 100 boys in suits and me. Didn't really get me. They quite liked having me around. No one knew what I did, but people liked having me around. Then I went to Disney channels, and I was creative director for UK, Scandinavia and emerging markets for all of the Disney channels. I was there for 2 years, launched things like High School Musical around Europe and stuff.
So we've got you to blame for that.
Yes, unfortunately. That was fun. Best job I ever had for my kids, who got to meet Zac Efron and Miley Cyrus, and
secretly, were you more excited?
I always got excited, and loads of Disney freebies. And then I went to be global creative director for NBC Universal. So I rebranded all of NBC's TV channels worldwide. Global in this case, of course, doesn't mean America, which is called domestic. Even though they've got all the budget. It sounds really shit, but they get all the budget. Global get like 1/8 of their budget.
It sounds good anyway.
It sounds good, so that was a nice job title. Rebrand all their channels, oversee all of their kind of digital work across basically the world, other than America. It was odd because you have a kind of Japanese team that would ring you at 2 o'clock in the morning, an Australian team would ring you 5 o'clock in the morning, Latin American team. It's just like weird trying to deal with that. Good for air miles. And then came to work at Addiction Worldwide as their creative director, looking after London and New York office. And then recently Addiction has been bought by Bray Leino, who are a huge advertising agency, mainly based outside of London. This is their first London office. I've become creative director of brand content and content across the Bray Leino group. Branding content, for people that don't really know that, is basically anything that isn't really traditional above the line advertising. So not a 30-second spot, not print. This could be 2-minute films. I mean, go to Nike's website, have a look what they do for branded content. They produce hundreds of hours of stuff that isn't traditional above the line stuff, whereas they only produce about 15 minutes of traditional commercials a year. They might produce about 200 hours of other content. It can be digital campaigns, it can be Facebook campaigns, Twitter, Vine. We're working on a Vine campaign at the moment. Basically anything that isn't your typical advertising model, I work on creatively.
How important is storytelling in branded content?
It's the heart of everything. It's, the truth is that a lot of what we talk about is only a methodology of getting across to people stuff. Digital is just another medium. ultimately content, good storytelling, good ideas are at the heart of any marketing and advertising campaign. It doesn't matter whether it's called branded content, social media, digital activation, or traditional above the line. Ideas, storytelling at the heart of it.
A lot of people struggle with telling a story, and it's almost an expectation that creatives can do it naturally, and it's not always the case. How have you? What changes have you seen in the storytelling expectations or process?
Biggest change for me in the last, and I've been doing this for about 15 years, is that it used to be that most of the creatives I knew that I worked with came from a writing and written background. Lots of them done English degrees, psychology degrees, history of art degrees, not that many. Nowadays, most creatives seem to come either from a graphical background, so they tell stories through pictures rather than through words, or through very specific degrees and courses that come through from universities. When I was at university, there were no advertising degrees, there were no copywriting degrees, there were no... You know, you go to D&AD show now, and it's like, and you look at the colleges, and then you look at the degrees, and they're so specific. It's amazing. And I think the problem with that is that it means that people start training very, very early into very specific areas. I'm a great believer that the world is full of amazing stories, and experience is a way of being able to tell those stories and turn it into something magical. And I think the problem for me is that people either... You know, you see designers now, when I design something, I tear things out of bits of paper and I draw stuff, and I use rostrum cameras, and you know, for me, that kind of stuff works. Nowadays, everything is via Mac. People look for inspiration, don't look at the stuff around them, they go to another website or another website. So, I think storytelling and ideas has perhaps become a lot more recycling of what other people do. And I think technically people are amazing, at a level that you just can't believe how good technically people are. But you ask people why they've done something like that, and people can't explain it. It's like, well, it looks nice. That's not good enough. There has to be a reason why you've done something. There's a reason why does it look like that? Why is it made like that? And I think that's one of the things that I find with creatives now, that basically they're not as good as explaining why, but they can do things that look unbelievable. But I like to have a reason for it. I like to have a heart to something. Everything's got to have a heart.
The value of branded content, certainly within agencies, has increased a lot over the past few years. From my experience, my understanding, there actually aren't that many courses at university where people can learn about branded content. Would you say that that's too specific to learn, or would you say that with the growth of branded content, people need to be learning that, how it works, and storytelling at that age?
I think it's one of those things that generally, if you can kind of subdivide the difference between above the line and branded content, above the line is traditionally a 30-second spot, maybe it's a minute spot. Branded content, because it lives on the web, you're not having to deal with kind of traditional kind of media buying and the structures that most traditional TV put you under when you make an ad, is you can make things that are much longer, you know. And also it doesn't even have to fit into a specific time. It doesn't have to fit into 30-second blocks. It can be 2 minutes long. We did a piece for Remington, you know, and it was a guy doing kind of tricks in San Francisco, kind of bike tricks, and you know, has had millions of hits. It's 187 seconds worth of precision, but ultimately it's like, you know, you're not fettered by some of the structures. So it's almost a little bit more like the difference between kind of free-form writing and short storytelling. It's giving people the ability to realise they don't have to tie things down with a simple tagline or, you know, a smart bit of punning copy. You're telling a story, and it's great. You know, it's lovely to write a novel rather than a short story, and that's often what branded content is. It allows people to actually sit back and tell a story. It's more like short filmmaking in some ways. But then you've got things like, you know, like I said, we're looking at a campaign at the moment that's using Vine at the heart of it. So suddenly you're having to tell a story in 6 seconds. How do you get across, you know, the heart of an idea in something that is a fleeting kind of moment? How do you get across stuff when you're asking people to send Instagram pictures in? Again, it's about making sure that people can tell a story with an image. So you have to have a thought behind it. You know, nowadays you do Instagram thing, everything looks great on Instagram. It's easy, it's a cheat. But actually you can still tell the difference between something that's an image that's got heart and an image that's just something nice with a Polaroid frigging filter on it. So I don't know whether people need to learn that, but I think they need to remember that good ideas and good stories should be at the heart of any communication you do. And I think that nowadays people have got a little bit suckered into smart taglines, quick little punning kind of phrases that make some sense, and some CGI graphics that people go, "Ooh, that's nice."
I guess a few years back, addiction and the space of branded content didn't really have too much competition. These days, because the value has increased, there are lots of agencies installing branded content divisions from scratch, and a lot of ad agencies who hold strong relationships with their brands are installing those divisions. How competitive has the market become?
I think you're absolutely right. It's changed quite a lot. It used to be, you know, a big agency, a JWT, an Ogilvy, whoever, would basically not get their hands dirty for less than a couple of 100,000. You know, and they were very happy looking at big above the line campaigns. I worked with is it DDB, who've got the Volkswagen account a few years ago. I made a sponsorship for them, and they were very happy making their £750,000 commercial, but they weren't interested in the £80,000 sponsorship. So they basically left us alone. They kind of said, well, that's kind of what our brand looks like, make it look like that. Nowadays, people don't want to let go of anything. You know, it's a hard world out there. 80 grand for a sponsorship is seen as something that agencies want to do. So
that's a really good point, actually. That's been a huge change in perception of a lot of agencies.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, and also people feel that they get more worried that actually if you work with a brand at some level, they might steal the client away. And I think one of the things that we try and convince people of is that actually, you know, there's a bit of the marketplace for everybody. You know, there are people who are very good at specific things that you do, and actually a brand might sometimes want to work in that area. You know, Nike have you know, the Portland office of Weed & Kennedy, who basically do pretty much all of their above the line stuff, and obviously they use other Weed & Kennedy agencies around the world. But then for branded content and stuff, they go to other people who do other work, because there's an understanding that different people are good at different modes of communication. As far as I'm aware, Weed are very good at saying we're the brand guardians, but actually if other people need to do that, or if Nike want to choose to do that, I mean, again, it's about giving clients choice. You know, you can't always argue that the same people. If I want, you know, if I want to have, if I want to buy a suit, I don't necessarily go to the same people that I go to buy a pair of jeans from, you know, and that's kind of how an agency like Addiction, Bray Leino, when it's working in sponsorship or when it's working in branded content, can work. We look at the needs that you specifically have and try and work with people. So we're great at working with other agencies. It's really not a big deal for us.
I guess you kind of hit the nail on the head. I guess a big reason why that change has come about is because of trust. And certainly if you give another agency a line of communication with your client, the chances are they're going to be hungry enough to build on that relationship and try and get more work in the future. That's just how...
It's the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to go, you know, especially if you enjoy working with somebody, you don't want to kind of go, oh, that was the end of that. You know, you want to keep that relationship going.
Yeah. Did you reckon that used to happen as much in the past, or do you reckon it's become a lot more competitive now because agencies know that anything's up for grabs, really?
I think it's tough out there. you know, that whole delineation between a big agency and a small agency is gone. So big agencies have now got little small offshoots. You've now got media agencies who have got their own creative agencies amongst them. So they want a bit of business. So everybody's looking behind their backs. You know, there's a lot of knives out in Soho.
Not just Soho, everywhere. Let's move on to a quick fire round.
Okay.
Can Lion or D&AD pencil?
D&AD pencil.
Olympic gold medal or an Oscar?
Oscar.
The brightest person you've worked with?
Martin Delamere.
The most creative person you've worked with?
My wife.
The best looking person you've worked with?
My wife.
Creatives or suits?
Creatives.
Money or...
In suits, sometimes.
Okay, interesting. Money or happiness?
Happiness.
Apple or Android?
Apple.
Facebook or Twitter?
Facebook.
Ant or Deck?
The one that doesn't have the giant forehead.
I don't actually know.
No one knows. It could be either of them.
Degree or no degree?
Don't care.
Art directors or copywriters?
It's got to be copywriters.
Retained work or pitch work?
Thrill of the pitch, security of retainer. Nowadays I'd say pitch work.
Web or mobile?
Web on my mobile.
Interesting. Independent agencies or networked agencies?
Independent.
Outsourced production or on-site production?
Both have advantages. Currently outsource.
Don Draper or Roger Sterling?
Don Draper.
And lastly, twist or stick?
Always twist.
Thank you very much.